We're streaming live now.
One sec, it's just setting up. I'll give you the link in a sec. Yeah, hi guys. Yeah, we're streaming live on YouTube.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this webinar brought to you by the Center for Law and Policy Research, Bangalore, a not-for-profit organization dedicated to making the Constitution work for everyone. As a part of our Constitutional Culture Initiative, we set up ConQuest in 2016. ConQuest is India's premier national level quiz on Indian Constitution, history, and politics. Over the past 4 years, we've seen over 8,000 students, faculty, and other members of the public engage with ConQuest, and now it has emerged as one of the most sought out for and popular educational events in India. This year, there are two significant changes to ConQuest. First, it marks the 5th anniversary of ConQuest, and second, our otherwise physical events have gone digital. So this last weekend, we've had 4 regional rounds wherein over 180 teams competed. And of these 180 teams, we're going to be selecting 8 teams today who will make it to the subsequent knockout rounds. We would like to thank our partners for constantly supporting ConQuest, and it's one of the reasons why it has emerged as successfully as it is. Our primary support is Frederick Norman Foundation for Freedom. Our prize money sponsor is Mr. Arvind Dattar, Senior Advocate, Supreme Court of India. Our digital partner is The Print. Our knowledge partner is Walnut Knowledge Solutions. Our student community partner is National Constitution Society. The purpose of today's webinar is twofold. Firstly, we would like to discuss answers to all the questions that were put forth to the participants across 4 regions in the past weekend. And second, we will announce those 8 teams from each of the regions who have made it to the next round. So before we begin, I'd like to let you know that after each question, we're going to wait for 5 seconds to read out any answers that any of you all who are watching type in. So without further delay, we would like to begin with discussing South Prelims question. So my colleague Madhvi is here, and both of us will be discussing the questions by taking turns. Yeah. So yeah. Moving to the first question.
The South Preliminary Regional Round.
Yeah. So pictured here is a freedom fighter who was also a women's rights advocate. And she was elected to the Constituent Assembly from Madras constituency in 1946. And in the assembly, she advocated for fundamental rights and directive principles of state policy. She was also a co-founder of the Women's India Association. So the question is, who is this person? So I'm just going to see if we have any answers. Yes. So we have Mohita typing in as Ammu Swaminathan. The answer is indeed Ammu Swaminathan. Apart from being a freedom fighter and women's rights advocate, she also worked on issues around child marriage, Devdasi practice, and adult suffrage. Post 1950, she went on to become a Lok Sabha member and thereafter a Rajya Sabha member. Her interest in films made her the vice president of the Federation of Film Societies and Censor Board. So moving on to the next question. Yeah, so here we have a picture of Anna Hazare, 1 rupee coin, logos of IIT Madras and Princeton University. And logo of Aam Aadmi Party. So the one person that connects everybody is who? I'm just going to wait out for 5 seconds and see if we have any answers coming in. Yes, so we have multiple people typing in as Prashant Bhushan. The answer is indeed Prashant Bhushan. Moving on. Yes, so pictured here is an individual announcing his entry to politics. While the party has no name as of now, its symbol is said to be borrowed from a 2002 movie, which film, whose fatherly title is also associated with the founder of a Haridwara-based company. So again, yes. So we're getting quick responses with people saying Baba, and the answer is indeed Baba. Moving on. Yes. An appendix featured in this book, which stands out as a document in its own right, outlined the demands of a group known as AISCF. Which group's rights were the subject of this appendix? Waiting out. Yes, the answer is scheduled castes. During the constitution making process, B.R. Ambedkar submitted this appendix, also known as States and Minorities Report, which was previously published as a part of this book. And the document contained a comprehensive constitutional architecture for the protection of scheduled castes. So moving on. Launched in March 2015, Back on Track Los Angeles is an initiative to provide a second chance to prisoners between the age of 23 to 58 who have committed non-serious and non-violent felonies. This initiative to train them to improve their employability was introduced by this person who frequented Chennai's Besant Nagar beach. Which person who recently has become quite popular are we talking about? Yes, we have several people answering correctly as Kamala Harris, who is the vice presidential nominee of the Democratic Party in the ongoing US elections. Moving on, Madhavi will go through the next set of questions.
Yeah, so The Great Indian Novel is a 1989 novel by Shashi Tharoor, whose characters are from the Hindu epics and which draws parallels to real-life historical figures and concepts. The character of Draupadi in this book is given the surname Mokrasi as a hint to a concept that Dr. B.R. Ambedkar said must be both social and political during the Constituent Assembly. What concept do you all think is being hinted at? So giving you a few seconds to answer. The answer is pretty evident from that surname. It is democracy. On 25th November 1949, during the last few sittings of the Constituent Assembly, Ambedkar said that we must make our political democracy a social democracy as well, because political democracy cannot last unless there lies at its base a social democracy, which means a way of life that recognizes liberty, equality, and fraternity as the principles of life. So moving on to the next question. This is a connect question. You can see we have a picture of the Ednir Mutt on the top left-hand side, of Bekal Fort on the top right-hand side, and at the bottom we have pictures of Justices H.R. Khanna and Justice J.R. Mudolkar. So the answer to this is a very famous case in Indian constitutional history. Giving you guys a couple of seconds. It is, of course, the Keshavananda Bharati case, which you can, the Ednirmat and Bekal Fort were subjects of this case. H.R. Khanna asserted the basic structure doctrine in this case quite famously, which was initially theorized by Justice Mudolkar in his 1964 dissent in the Sajjan Singh case. So moving on, Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi in the US House of Representatives set a Guinness World Record by speaking for 8 hours on the subject of immigration. This eclipsed a famous 7-hour and 48-minute speech given in 1957 by an Indian diplomat. What was the subject of the latter's speech? And the answer, it's something that is quite controversial in Indian politics, both past and present, and it is Kashmir. So moving on to the next question. The Hindustan Times, in an editorial, argued that a document marked the final death of communal egotism and the birth of a national consciousness in the country. It also stated that we had drawn the Magna Carta of our liberty. What document do you think is being spoken about here? It's a document from the 1920s, a very important constitutional document, and I can see answers coming in, and it is the Nehru Report. So the Nehru Report was drafted in response to the Simon Commission of 1927 by a committee headed by Motilal Nehru, which wanted to draft an indigenous constitution for India. As a constitutional document, it unequivocally demanded dominion status for India and provided a number of fundamental rights such as equality, freedom of speech, and religion, and free elementary education. However, the public response to this was mixed, notably because it dropped the idea of separate electorates for Muslims. Now, this next question is about the famous Fearless Girl statue. In mid-September, Wall Street's Fearless Girl statue was about to be featured wearing a mask to spread awareness about the pandemic. At the last minute, however, this ad with the caption, "Here's to the original," came out. Why was this last-minute change of adding a collar to the statue made? Giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer. You can see that the answer was to honor Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who died on 18th September 2020. She was a famous justice of the US Supreme Court. Now, the next question is about a government body founded in 1964 with the Mysore High Court Justice as its first commissioner. Which body whose logo appropriately features an eye is being talked about? This is a very famous body in our country and a very important one. I'm going to give you guys a couple of seconds to answer. And the answer is the Central Vigilance Commission. So K. Santhanam, who is a member of the Constituent Assembly from Madras, he was appointed as the chairman of the Committee on Prevention of Corruption in 1962. The recommendations of this committee, which is also known as the Santhanam Committee, resulted in the establishment of the Central Vigilance Commission, or the CVC, in 1964. The purpose of this body is to oversee government activities and to eradicate corruption, hence the I in the logo. So moving on to Kritika.
Yeah. So here's the connect question. On the top left, we have the picture of Mopla Rebellion. And then the two gentlemen featured here, one of them is Maulana Abul Kalam Azad and the other one is Shaukat Ali. And the flag here is that of Ottoman Empire. What is one thing that connects all these elements? Giving a couple of seconds for answers to roll in. Yes, we have Sumukh, Akshay, Akyat, all of them saying that it's Khilafat movement. The answer is indeed Khilafat. Yeah. So the next question, the graph on the right from Amnesty International depicts the list of abortionless countries regarding a two-word term, one of which, the first word, comes from the Latin word for head. What term is being talked about? Yes. People have said capital punishment, death penalty. The answer is capital punishment. We specifically wanted people to answer it as capital punishment because it connects to the main element of the question, which is that it's derived from Latin word. Going on to the next question. This politicized buzzword, today most commonly associated with India, is of Portuguese or Spanish origin. When the Spanish colonized the New World, they used the word to mean a clan or lineage. What word is derived from this Portuguese or Spanish word? Yes, we've had several answers coming in, and all of them have got it right. The answer is indeed caste. Moving on to the next question. What purpose did these certain tools, such as the one pictured here, serve with regards to the Constitution of India? This was a rather easy question. Looking for answers to roll in. Yes, the answer is indeed calligraphy. The Constitution of India was not originally printed. It was a handiwork of calligrapher Prem Bihari Narayan and artist Nandlal Bose. The finalized finished manuscript was 251 pages long, and it is now being preserved in a special helium-filled case in the Library of the Parliament of India in New Delhi. Moving on. A term is used for a member of parliament in the British House of Commons who occupies no governmental office. The term in India is generally used in the context of lackluster students. What are we talking about? Giving a couple of seconds. Yes, the answer is indeed backbencher. So these are the last three individuals to hold a certain post, with the gentleman at the extreme right taking it up as of August 8th, 2020. What constitutional post have these gentlemen been discharged with? Yes, the answer is indeed CAG. On the extreme right, can you go back to the previous slide, please? Yeah. So on the extreme right, we have GC Murmu, who's currently the Controller and Auditor General of India. On the extreme left is Shashikant Sharma, who was the CAG between 2013 to 2017. And the person in the middle is Rajiv Maishri, who occupied this post between 2017 to 2020. And the office of CAG is a constitutional authority, which is established by Article 148. And Article 149 elaborates the duties and powers of the CAG. Moving on, Madhavi will take us through the next set.
So this talks about a common name for a constitutional document known as the Indian Council Act of 1909. It is also named for the two gentlemen pictured here for their role in drafting it. So how is this document also known? The picture of these two men over here should give you a hint, and we're going to give you a couple of seconds to answer this. So I can see that Akshay has got the right answer. So do a few others. The answer is the Morley-Minto reforms, named after Lord Minto and Lord John Morley, who were the Viceroy and Secretary of State of British India, respectively. Now we come on to a connect question. So we can see over here, Godrej, which created the ballot boxes for the first ever general election. On the top left-hand side, on the top right, we have a picture of Vijay Deverakonda, whose first debut film in Tamil was called Nota. On the bottom right, we have the logo of Mysore Paints and Varnishes, which manufactures indelible ink. And on the bottom left, we have a picture of Sukumar Sen, the first ever Chief Election Commissioner of India. So what do you think the answer to this question is? And once again, we have a few answers rolling in and they are correct. The answer is the Election Commission of India. And we accepted elections in ECI also as an answer. Moving on, this was a star-marked question. Freedom is in peril, defend it with all your might. This phrase appeared in a political cartoon and it inspired a gentleman who was known for, among other things, writing a set of letters to his daughter to feature it on the masthead of a media organization that he established in Lucknow in 1939. Which media organization are we talking about? It's been the subject of much controversy in the past. And the answer is, I can see an answer, the correct answer coming in from Sumuk and Prajwal. And it is, of course, National Herald, founded by Jawaharlal Nehru, who was, of course, famous for being our prime minister, but also for writing a number of letters to his daughter, Indira Gandhi. So we've reached the end of the discussion for the South preliminary rounds. We hope you enjoyed that. We're going to now move on to the discussion for the East preliminary rounds. So Kritika, please begin with the first question.
So this was a rather easy question. There's a two-word term which connects this Keanu Reeves film and the journalist pictured on the right. Without giving additional clues, let's see if we have any answers. Yes, the correct answer, as guessed by participants on comments, is Devil's Advocate. On the left-hand side is a movie, and on the right-hand side is a book and also a show that Karan Thapar famously anchored called Devil's Advocate. Moving on, here is an excerpt of a speech made by a member of the Constituent Assembly in 1946. The highlighted phrase, proud to be a jungli, could serve as another added clue. Which person are we talking about here? Looking for answers to roll in? Yes. The answer, as many of you have typed out, is Jaipal Singh Munda. So while majority of Constituent Assembly members were elected from a particular political party, that is Indian National Congress, the Constituent Assembly also had a few independent candidates. And Jaipal Singh Munda was one such independent candidate to have been elected to the Constituent Assembly, and he used the Assembly as a platform to voice his concerns for the rights of the Adivasis. Moving on. Yeah. So these three ancient groups from Rome that were each headed by a dash, these individuals represented the groups in civil, religious, and military matters. What term, used in the context of decision makers, is derived from these group leaders? Another very easy hint can be derived from the picture on the right-hand side. Yes, the answer is indeed tribunals. Moving on, easy question. This is the logo of Pravasi Bharatiya Divas, an annual celebration that takes place on 9th of January every year, celebrating non-resident Indians. The date was chosen to mark the return of a famous NRI whose return does this day honor. Yes, as many of you have started typing out, the answer is indeed Mahatma Gandhi, and his return from South Africa on January 9th is marked as Pravasi Divas. Moving on, what balanced imagery was the design of the Supreme Court of India meant to evoke? Another easy question. Waiting for answers to come in. Yes, the answer, as many of you have already guessed, is scales of justice. Now, Madhvi will take us through the next set.
Right. So this is another connect question. On the top left-hand side, you can see Mithun Chakrabarti in the movie Guru. On the top right-hand side, you can see the symbol of the Indian Express newspaper. On the bottom right-hand side, you can see a picture of Dhirubhai Ambani. And on the bottom left-hand side, you can see a picture of a nib, which has the Excellence of in Journalism Awards carved into it. So I'm going to give you guys a couple of seconds to connect this to a famous Indian Constituent Assembly member. And I can already see that a couple of answers have come in, and the answer is indeed Ramnath Goenka, a Constituent Assembly member from Madras who was elected on a Congress party ticket. He founded the Indian Express newspaper, which often voiced criticism against the government of the day, both against the British government under colonial rule and also during the emergency against Indira Gandhi's government. Notably, another member of the Constituent Assembly also served as the first editor of the Indian Express. This was K. Santanam, who we discussed in the context of the answer on the Central Vigilance Commission. So moving on, this is a 13-member committee which consisted of distinguished individuals who were not only famous for their work in public affairs, but also for their lack of affiliation with any political party. They came together to put out a 343-page report in 1945. Several members of this committee went on to be members of the Indian Constituent Assembly. What committee are we talking about? The hint is that it's named after the pictured individual. And I can see the first correct answer has come in from Sakshi. The answer is indeed the Sapru Committee report. It was prepared by a committee headed by Tej Bahadur Sapru, a famous lawyer pictured over here. Notably, the committee did not include members of any of the famous political parties of the day, the Congress or the Muslim League. It made constitutional proposals to resolve the minority issue at the time and to assuage communal tensions that were ongoing, such as rejecting the demand for Pakistan and the demand for separate electorates. Important members of the committee who went on to become members of the Constituent Assembly include M.R. Jayakar, Gopal Sami Iyengar, and Sachidananda Sinha, who also became the provisional chairman of the Constituent Assembly. Moving on, the directive principles of state policy of India are heavily influenced by Article 45 of the Constitution of which country? This is a pretty easy question. I think I can see answers coming in already. I'm going to give a few more people a little bit of time to reply, but this is quite well known. And yes, the answer is Ireland, of course. That's the name of the Constitution of Ireland, written in English and in Irish. Moving on, Larsen and Toubro came in second with an 865 crore valuation, whereas Tata Projects secured it with an 861.9 crore valuation. What are we talking about over here? I'm going to give you guys a few more seconds to reply. And yes, the answer is indeed the bid for the new parliament building. We've also accepted answers on new parliament. So a few of you definitely got points for that. The next question is, Rajashri Goody created a shredded and pulped artwork out of an ancient law text, which was once publicly burned by B.R. Ambedkar. Which work, which is known for its iconic red cover, are we talking about over here? I'm giving you guys a few more seconds to answer. And we have the right answer rolling in from Akshay first, and it is indeed Manusmriti. So let's move on now. Kritika will be asking the next few questions. Kritika, you're muted, I think.
Sorry, yeah. A Lebanese British barrister who is highlighted here recently became the third lawyer to part ways with the Prime Minister Boris Johnson's government. This was because the government introduced the Brexit law. So name this former UK envoy for media freedom who left their post in protest. Giving in a couple of seconds to identify this person. Yes, as many of you have already guessed, the answer is Amal Clooney. Moving on. So here is another connect question. On top left, we have Justice V. Ramaswamy. On bottom left, we have P.D. Dinakaran. On top right, we have the picture of Sumitra Sen. And the other clue is the term that is an answer for this connect question is derived from Middle English for hinder. What ties all these pictures together? Waiting for answers to come in. Couple more seconds. Yes, Amit got it right. The answer is indeed impeachment. The list of the judges pictured in the previous slide are the judges against whom impeachment proceedings were initiated in the parliament. Moving on. This section of parliamentary proceedings, generally the first hour in the morning, consists of starred, unstarred, and short notice varieties. Which part of the proceedings that was unceremoniously scrapped by the ruling party for the monsoon session of the Parliament 2020 are we talking about? Another easy score. What are we talking about? Yes. We are having a mixed bag of responses. Most of you all think it's 0 hour, but the answer is indeed question hour. So question hour is crucial in ensuring accountability and transparency of the government and provides a platform for the opposition parties to voice concerns and keep a check on the government's working. Rule 32 of the Rules of Procedure in Lok Sabha provides for every first hour to be the question hour. Similarly, Rule 38 fixes 12 p.m. to 1 p.m. as the question hour in Rajya Sabha. Moving on. The film pictured here played a pivotal role in a landmark case that particularly affected the Indian entertainment industry. It was modeled on the plot of a play titled Hum Hindustani, This case clarified the concepts of idea expression dichotomy and copyright infringement under the Indian copyright law. What is the capital title of the movie? Another clue is in the word capital. Let's see if we're getting right answers in a few more seconds. Seems like Akshay is the only one who's gotten it right so far. The answer is New Delhi. Moving on. Since 2015, India's tally, in a certain respect, infamously though, has risen to 315. Advocates around the country have strongly opposed these and have tried to get them overturned. What that has caused several mass exodus from WhatsApp groups is being talked about here. A few seconds to see if you're getting answers in. Looks like this was a tough one. I don't see any correct answers. The answer is internet bans. Over to you, Madhavi.
Yeah, thank you. So the diplomat pictured on the left played a major role in drafting the Indian Constitution, and he's also associated with the drafting of the Constitution of another country. He was invited by the gentleman on the right, whose daughter may be more familiar to us for this effort. Which country did he draft another constitution for? So I'm giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer. And I can see an answer rolling in for this from Nikhil. He's identified the person pictured as B.N. Rao, but Anshuman is the first to correctly identify that the answer is indeed Myanmar. Sir Benegal Narsingh Rao served as the constitutional advisor to the Indian Constituent Assembly. In 1947, he was invited to draft Myanmar's constitution by General Aung San, who is also the father of Aung San Suu Kyi, now the de facto head of Myanmar. So Rao's effort resulted in the Constitution of Burma of 1948, which bore a number of similarities, both in substance and form, to the Constitution of India, 1950. Now, this was definitely a tough question. The monarch pictured here held presidentist powers in the early days of independence, but this was thanks to a short-lived act or legislation that was passed in 1947 and which was repealed soon after thanks to the instrument of accession. Which act are we talking about over here? I'm giving you all a couple of seconds to respond. A hint I can give you is that this is, I can see answers coming in. There are mixed bag of answers, Independence Act in Kashmir, but I can see Avnish has got it right. It is indeed the Manipur State Constitution Act of 1947. The person pictured here is Maharaja Bochandra Singh of the princely state of Manipur. He assumed this role in 1941. When Indian independence was on the verge of becoming a reality, Manipur, like many other princely states, had the option of either becoming independent or joining the Indian Union. While Manipur wanted to become independent, its people also wanted democratic governance. And so the Maharaja began a constitution-making committee, which was headed by British civil service servant F.F. Pearson. He drafted the state constitution that essentially made Manipur a constitutional monarchy, much like England. However, because of political pressures, Manipur later became a part of the Indian Union, and by signing the Act of Accession, repealed this act. Moving on. So there are only two fundamental rights in the Indian Constitution that provide a penal provision within their text. One is Article 23 on forced labor, which is the other fundamental right, and which was also the subject of this Mulk Raj Anand book. Giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer this. And the answer is indeed untouchability in Article 17 of the Indian Constitution. Next, despite the name of the series of events that took place in the 1930s, the participants were seated in a flattened, ovular, maze-like fashion. Which series of events that shaped constitutional reforms in India are being talked about? A hint is in the bolded words, ovular, maze-like fashion. A couple of seconds to answer this. And I can see once again, Anshuman has the first right answer, which is that this were the roundtable conferences. The next and last question in the East prelims is about this, the author of this book. Which member of the Constituent Assembly and also former governor of Maharashtra wrote this book, which talked about their time at the Naini Central Jail? I'm giving you guys a couple of seconds to come up with the answer. And I can see that once again, Akshay is the first to answer. And the answer is indeed Vijay Lakshmi Pandit. She was the sister of Jawaharlal Nehru and daughter of Motilal Nehru, of course, but she became a prominent Indian political figure in her own right. She was imprisoned thrice, and during her third term in prison, she wrote Prison Days. Pandit went on to become one of the 15 women who was elected to the Indian Constituent Assembly. So now let's move on to the North preliminary rounds. Kritika, why don't you begin with the first question and unmute yourself?
Yeah. So here on the top left is an image of Safdarjung Hospital. Other clue is that there's a fiery word that is derived from the Latin word for sprinkled with sacrificial meal. On the bottom left is image of B.B. Mandal. On the bottom right is the image of Rajiv Goswami. What connects all these?
Kritika, unmute.
Hello?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, was I unmuted the entire time?
You were audible. You read the first one. You read the question out. So we're just giving everybody a couple of seconds to answer. And yeah.
Yes, the answer, as some of you have rightly pointed out, is indeed Mandal Commission. Moving on. Yes, originating in 1990s Japan, these services soon started appearing across the world. They charged exorbitant fees to provide something that is a 5-letter term that appropriately translates to somewhere else. What services or term the subject of the film pictured here is described? A couple of seconds to see if we are getting correct answers. Yes, as many of you have rightly guessed, the answer is Alibi. Moving on to the next question. Yeah. The book pictured is a 1980s fiction novel by a noted Gujarati author, Harkisan Mehta. The novel is inspired by a case that came to a conclusion in 2015 at King Edward Memorial Hospital, which nurse, who was the center of attention in a court case on euthanasia, inspired this novel. A couple of seconds to see if we are getting in Right answers? Yes. A host of you have correctly identified it as Aruna Schonberg. The Supreme Court in 2011 allowed, under exceptional circumstances, for passive euthanasia for persons suffering from terminal illness or are in permanent vegetative state. The court invoked Article 21, which guaranteed the right to live with dignity, to determine this case. Moving on, Sukumar Sen, India's first chief election commissioner, was also the first CEC of two other countries. If one of them was Nepal, which African nation was the other? A couple of seconds to see if we'll get right answers. Yes, Mohita was the first one to correctly identify it as Sudan. Sukumar Sen, who oversaw India's first general elections on the basis of universal franchise, a mammoth task which saw the enfranchisement of over 170 million people, of which over 80% had never voted before. As the chairman of the International Election Commission, Sen conducted the first general elections in the state of Sudan in 1953. Next question. Here on the top left, you have image of Darasana Salt Works. On the top right, image of International Congress's logo. On the bottom left is Al Hind newspaper. Sorry. On the bottom right is picture of entrance to Jamia Millia Islamia. Which person has connection with all these four elements? Yes, the answer, as Prajwal identified, is indeed Maulana Abul Kalam Azad. Moving on, Madhavi will take us through the next set of questions.
Yeah, thanks, Kritika. So looking at these four actresses on the screen, what role connects all four of them? From the left, we have Leela Naidu, then Lily Chakrabarti, then Ileana de Cruz, and Ellie Avram. So which is the role that connects all four of these actresses? And we're going to wait a couple of seconds so you guys can answer us. And I can see one correct answer has come in from Abhiram. It is, or sorry, no, the correct answers haven't come in. Apologies for that mistake. But yes, Prajwal has and Dhruv have identified this as the wife of K.M. Nanavati. The actual answer is Sylvia Nanavati. We've accepted a variety of answers for this, both Sylvia, both Nanavati, and the wife of K.M. Nanavati. This is another connect question. On the top left, we have a picture of Henry Dunant. On the top right, we have a picture of the Swiss flag. On the bottom left, we have a picture of a battle that is identified as a 19th century conflict between France and Austria. And on the bottom left, we have a logo, which is the logo of the International Court of Justice. So what connects all four of these? I'm giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer. And I can see a variety of answers have come in. I can see that this was clearly a tricky question because a lot of people are guessing Red Cross. But in fact, the answer is, as Rituraj has just mentioned, the Geneva Convention. Henry Dunant was the father of the Geneva Convention, which today lays down the international humanitarian law, which is the law which governs the conduct of warfare both by states and their militaries. Dunant, when he founded the Red Cross, also was integral in setting up the 1864 Geneva Convention Conference, which resulted in the first Geneva Convention, which set out rules to protect wounded and sick soldiers during warfare. The subsequent Geneva Convention set out rules to protect shipwrecked persons, prisoners of war, and civilians during warfare. Moving on to the next question. These viral visuals were taken at a farewell speech. Whose farewell drew in such a crowd? Giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer this. And I can see this might be a tricky question. So we're going to move on to the answer, which is the farewell of Justice S. Muralidhar. And I can see a couple of answers have come in just now as I said the answer, which, yes, you guys are right. It is Justice S. Muralidhar. So we're going to move on to the next question. Historian Karma McLean said that a 1931 event may have influenced the Karachi resolution. She states that many socialistic provisions in this resolution were the result of a heart-to-heart talk between Gandhi and Nehru about this event. According to her, what was the event that had occurred just a week prior, which might have influenced the 1931 Karachi session and therefore the Indian Constitution? Giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer. And yes, we have a few correct answers. First one from Sharmishta. And it is indeed the execution or the hanging of Bhagat Singh. We accepted a variety of answers over here. Bhagat Singh and his associates, Sukhdev and Rajguru, were hanged on 23rd March 1931 for bombing the Central Legislative Assembly. And the socialist branch of the Congress Party was extremely angry because of this execution and had to be mollified by the Congress Party's top brass. As a result, to mollify them, certain socialist-based principles were included in the Karachi Resolution of 1931, a constitutional document passed by the Indian National Congress, which set out certain important fundamental rights. Now, previously, constitutional documents had only talked about civil liberties. This was the first to elaborate on a number of important socio-economic rights, which the state had to adhere to, and which formed the basis of the directive principles of state policy that were included in the 1950 Constitution of India. Moving on the lawns of which landmark would you find head sculptures such as these? Giving you guys a couple of minutes to answer. This is a very famous landmark. And I can see that a few correct answers have come in, and the answer is indeed Jallianwala Bagh. Now moving back on to Kritika.
Yeah. This quadrennial event has brought about a lot of judicial changes across various nations, from changes on alcohol bans to temporary courts set up to dole out judgments for up to 15 years, thus overcrowding local jails. Which event that will be held next in 2020 has caused all these changes? A couple of seconds to see if we get the right answers in. Yes, getting a variety of answers, but the right answer is FIFA. Moving on. This concept was proposed in the mid-1930s by the gentleman honored in the stamp. In 1940, the British agreed to adopt this concept after the Indian National Congress formally demanded it. What concept is being talked about? Checking in to see if you're getting right answers. Yes, the answer, some of you rightly pointed out, is Constituent Assembly. M.N. Roy was the first person to demand a Constituent Assembly for India in 1935. A year later, the Indian National Congress made this a formal demand to the British. And the Indian National Congress, in its resolution, also rejected a British proposal, also known as the White Paper, on constitutional reforms for India. And this White Paper would then go on to become the Government of India Act 1935. Moving on. Yes, the Government of India Act 1935 was introduced by the UK Parliament to provide a large measure of autonomy to the provinces of British India. As we just discussed in the previous slide, it also sought to bring in a host of constitutional reforms. One specific section of this act went on to inspire an article in the Indian Constitution that has been used in several instances across the country. Which, what article are we talking about? And the person pictured here has a specific relevance to this article. What are we talking about? Yes, Smith not only identified the article, but also identified the person rightly. The answer is indeed Article 356, which allows for the president to impose a state of emergency in certain states. We have, however, not given points for people who've just said emergency because, as you might all know, the Constitution identifies different types of emergencies. And in this particular question, talks about a particular type of emergency, which is the president's rule. And S.R. Bommai, the reason why he's significant to this article is that while he was the 11th Chief Minister of Karnataka, his government was dismissed and he took this to the Supreme Court, which in its famous judgment, S.R. Bommai versus Union of India, provided a set of guidelines to prevent misuse of president's rule under Article 356. Moving on. Yeah, the gentleman pictured here graduated with a degree in American literature. However, his most significant contribution was in the form of his graduate thesis in Oxford University, which eventually went on to become a book. And this book serves as a cornerstone of Indian constitutional history. Identify the author. Yes, Mr. Panikar got it right. First, the answer is Granville Austin. Moving on. The Constituent Assembly met for 165 days to draft India's constitution. The members of the assembly also sat for a duration of 165 days for another specific purpose, similar to the assemblies of Pakistan, Poland, and France. What alternative purpose did the Constituent Assembly serve? Giving a few seconds to see if right answers roll in. Yes. We have different types of answers. Some of you say it's provisional legislature, some of you say it's parliament. We have given points for either of these iterations. The answer is, of course, national legislation, and we've accepted a host range of variations for this answer. Moving on, Madhavi is going to take us to the next set of questions.
Yeah, thanks. So what 5-word phrase, which translated in Hindi, was used by the Mumbai police to encourage the public to work with them? So I'm going to wait a couple of minutes for a few answers. And I can see that Simran has typed in an answer. She's typed in the Hindi version of the answer. We've accepted both. The answer in English is the long arm of the law, which is translated into Hindi as Kanun ke haath lambe hote hai. And we also accept that as an answer. The next question This was a pretty easy one. This 2020 novel is a fictionalized tale of a lawyer's actions during the 1990s that involved her husband. So which lawyer is the subject of this book? There's a big hint in the title of the book, which is displayed on the cover page, giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer this. And I can see Nikhil has typed in the first answer. The answer is indeed Hillary Clinton. Her maiden name was Rodham, and she goes as Hillary Rodham Clinton at times. And of course, her husband is former US President Bill Clinton. Next question is, what is depicted in this pictogram? You can see various shapes are drawn over here. What does this depict? Giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer this. And the answer is indeed parliament shapes. We also accepted things like seating in parliament as an answer. A lot of leeway, latitude was given for answers in this as long as you implied the correct answer. The next one is the pictured economist and politician over here. He pushed for two words to be included in the Indian Constitution. They were eventually added in the Constitution in the mid-1970s through an amendment. Shortly after, a petition which claimed this insertion was unconstitutional asked for the words to be removed once again. Which two words are we talking about? Giving you guys a couple of seconds to answer, and I can see a bunch of correct answers have already come in. It is indeed socialist and secular. The man pictured over here is K.T. Shah. He was a prominent socialist in the assembly who made important interventions in a number of debates. Now, his amendment to describe India as socialist and secular failed in the assembly, but this was because B.R. Ambedkar argued that these words were redundant. So he said that the DPSPs are indeed socialist in their direction and content, while the entire constitution embodied the concept of the secular state. Now later, when constitutional challenges came to the insertion of these words through the 46th Amendment, judges relied on this reasoning to uphold the inclusion of socialist and secular in the Constitution, stating that they were inherent in the nature of the Constitution. Now moving on to the next question. This is a connect question. Let's see if you can all connect who these 5 personalities are, what connects all of them. Giving you guys a couple more seconds to answer. I'm going to start describing who these people are. We have in the center, of course, B.N. Rao. In the extreme right, we have Nagendra Singh. In the bottom left, we have R.S. Pathak, and we also have Dalbir Bandari in the bottom right, and M.C. Chagla in the top left corner. Do we have any correct answers? And yes, we do have quite a few. The answer is indeed Indian judges of the International Court of Justice. So that concludes the North preliminary answer discussion. We're going to go on to the last preliminary discussion, which is the West round, after which we will be announcing the results. Okay, Kritika, why don't you start us off again?
So pictured here is a Marathi language director who gained global recognition for his recent movie 2020, which he directed in 2020, that took home several honors at various international film festivals. However, back in India, he was quite popular for directing this 2014 film, which largely features activists as opposed to actors, and which navigated the justice system in India. Couple of seconds to see if I get the right answer. Aditya seems to be the only one at the moment to have got it right. The answer is court. The gentleman pictured in the previous slide is Chaitanya Tanmane, who was the director of Court, and his most recent movie that the question talks about is titled The Disciple, which navigates the personal and professional journey of a Hindustani classical singer. Moving on, the gentleman pictured here was one of the founding members of this organization that we're talking about, which was founded in 1970s. The organization itself takes inspiration from a revolutionary group whose name might remind you of a very famous 2018 Oscar-nominated movie. What is the name of the organization? What is the name of the organization that's set up in India that this gentleman helped co-found, which focuses on anti-discrimination? Yes, Darshil got it right first. The answer is Dalit Panthers. Can you go back to the previous slide, Madhuri, for a second? The person pictured here is Raja Dale. He was a prominent writer, artist, and activist who worked on Dalit rights. He, along with Namdev Dasal and J.V. Pawar, founded the Black Panthers movement, and they were inspired by Ambedkar and Black Panthers, a party which was set up in the US to assert rights for African Americans. And the Dalit Panthers in India focused on fighting against Dalit atrocities. Moving on. Moving on to the next question. A voice vote passed by the Rajya Sabha in September last month quoted controversy, with media and opposition proclaiming its unconstitutional nature. 3 key agricultural bills were passed during this vote. Members of the press have noted its similarity to an event from about 3 decades ago. Which legislature, the subject of this book pictured here, spearheaded this move? Couple of seconds to see if we have the right answer. The answer is, as many of you have rightly pointed out, P.V. Narasimha Rao. We'll have to go a bit faster because it's been almost an hour and we don't want to keep you guys longer. Next question. What concept or system that is enshrined in the Constitution as introduced by 1992 is being described here, and the same concept was proposed by M.K. Gandhi. A couple of seconds to see if we have the right answer, and another clue is that a web series pictured here was also titled. Yes, as many of you have rightly pointed out, the answer is Panchayati Raj. Moving on. Yes. In India, the term uses compulsory acquisition as governed by this very long titled act. How does the world recognize this concept that has its origin in this Hugo Grotius book? A couple of seconds to see if we have right answers coming in. Yes, as some of you have already identified, the answer is eminent domain. Madhavi is going to take us through the next set now.
Right. So this common backronym is associated with a cantonment town in central India, and it has to do with the military presence in the region. In 2003, it was renamed after an individual born in the town, and a memorial was built in the shape of a Buddhist stupa to honor him. That's a pretty big hint over here. What is the 4-letter name of this town, which is a homonym for a nickname by which the gentleman pictured here over here is referred to? And the big clue over here is that that's a picture of Jose Mourinho, a famous football coach. And I can see that a number of answers have come in, and it is indeed Mao, which is where Ambedkar was born. Moving on to the next question. Due to a resemblance to certain sartorial choice, what nickname is given to mushrooms such as these? I can tell you that we had quite a few pretty funny answers for this one during the preliminary rounds. I'm looking forward to see what answers we're going to get here. Giving you guys a couple of seconds. And I get the sense that this has stumped quite a few people, except Sarthak's come in with the correct answer, which is lawyer's wig mushroom. Next, who is the subject of the play Drawing the Line that toured London's West End and premiered at the Hampstead Theatre? A big hint is in the name of the play, Drawing the Line. We're giving you a couple more seconds to answer over here. And the answer is indeed, as some of you have guessed, Sir Cyril Radcliffe. We've also accepted Radcliffe and Sir Radcliffe as the answers. Sir Cyril Radcliffe, as many of you know, is a British lawyer who was given the task of demarcating the boundaries between India and Pakistan when partition became imminent and the new state of Pakistan had to be created. The apportionment of land between the two countries was known as the Radcliffe Award, whereas the official boundary line is known as the Radcliffe Line. Moving on, an organization which calls itself the oldest scientific department of the government of India and which is headquartered in Dehradun, is also the one that printed the initial 1,000 photolithographic reproductions of the handwritten constitution. Which organization are we referring to over here? There was a lot of confusion with this question during the preliminary rounds. Remember that this organization claims to be the oldest scientific department. And we can see answers coming in. It is indeed the Survey of India. Now, this next question, which community whose reserved seats in the Parliament and state legislatures of India were discontinued by the 126th Constitutional Amendment Bill of 2019 connects these two politicians? Going to give you guys a couple more seconds to come up with the answer. And indeed, you can see it is Anglo-Indians in the Lok Sabha. We've accepted Anglo-Indians and Anglo-Indian community. Article 331 and 333 allow the president or governor of a state to nominate Anglo-Indians to the Lok Sabha or the state legislative assemblies respectively. This was the result of a proposal made by a very famous Anglo-Indian, Frank Anthony, to Nehru. And as a result, it was included in the constitution. Richard Hay and George Baker, pictured over here, were the most recent Anglo-Indians nominated to the Lok Sabha by the NDA government in 2014. Moving back on to Kritika.
Yes. So in 1983, Indira Gandhi invited this retired judge to serve on the Supreme Court, along with B. Shivaraman and S.R. Sen. He came out with a 2-volume report, which was finally submitted in January 1988 on center-state relations. What is the name of the report being talked here? A couple of seconds to see if right answers are in. Yes, as many of you have rightly pointed out, the answer is indeed Sarkaria Commission report. Moving on. Held in disgrace by his Kulin Brahmin family for having converted to Christianity, a certain gentleman left his hometown to become the first Indian in the country to be ordained as Presbyterian minister. He married a Kashmiri at the mission in Jalandhar. His sons ended up the named defendants in a watershed case involving 500 acre piece of land. Which iconic case is being talked here? Yes, I see the right answer coming in. The answer is I.C. Golaknath. Moving on. Connect this list with the director pictured here to arrive at a 10-letter answer. Another easy question. Let's see if we get the right answers in. Yes, I see right answer. I see a host of you coming up with the right answer. The answer is indeed Samvidhan. It's a 10-part series which dramatized the Indian constitution making process and the Constituent Assembly debates. It's directed by the gentleman pictured here, Shyam Benegal, and was produced by Rajya Sabha TV. Next question. What connects or which person connects all these elements? On the top left, you have Hari Salve. On the top right, you have Raw. On the bottom right, you have the map of Balochistan. Which person connects all of these? A couple of seconds to see if right answers are rolling in. Yes, the answer is Kulbhushan Jadhav, sorry. Moving on. Which two-word moniker, famously given to the British Prime Minister, was at various points used to refer to these Indian icons? Another easy score. Let's see if I get any right answers. A couple more seconds. Yes, the answer is Iron Lady. The person, can you go back to the previous slide for a second, Madhavi? Yes, the person on the bottom, on the extreme right is Indira Gandhi. On the extreme left is Sharmila. And middle is Durgabai Deshmukh, a Constituent Assembly member. Moving on, Madhavi is going to take us to the next and final set.
Yeah, guys, this is the last leg of the quiz. We're going to be announcing the results soon after this, so please stay on. So coming to this question, unlike the US Constitution, the Indian Constitution does not give us a right to bear arms. However, there was a proposal to include such a right that was made during the constitution making process. Which politician, who was also a member of the first and third Lok Sabhas, introduced this proposal in the Constituent Assembly? Giving you guys just a couple of seconds to answer this. I can see a few answers coming in over here. Giving you guys a couple more seconds. And yes, I can see the right answer, which is 8V Kamath. The next question, what two-word name that could describe this image was adopted by this prominent civil society organization that has been a behemoth in peace efforts in their northeastern state? Look at this picture closely. Tell us, giving you guys a couple of seconds to come up with the right answer. And I can see answers coming in. However, we haven't got the right answer yet, but I'm going to move on. It is Naga mothers. All right. Moving on to the next question. I can see a few answers coming in a little later in response, getting Naga mothers correct. But yes, next question. In 2015 January, when US President Barack Obama visited India, he was presented with the original copy of the first dash, which was sent from the US to India's Constituent Assembly back in 1946. It was sent by the former US Secretary of State, Sir Sachidananda Sinha, highlighting the importance of the constitution drafting process that India was about to embark on. What is the answer? And I can already see a few people have answered this correctly. The answer is indeed a telegram. Now, coming to the next and the second last question in the entire discussion. This is the logo of an organization that conducts Lok Adalats for speedy resolutions of cases and provides free legal services to eligible candidates. A big hint is that this organization's name can be arrived at by eliminating the final letter of an acronym used to refer to a law school in South India. Any ideas what this could be? And we have the right answer, which is NALSA, the National Legal Services Authority. And now this is the very last question in the entire discussion, guys. So who was the author of this document of 14 points from the late 1920s, some of which are shown below in the slide, and which was made in response to the Nehru report? Giving you guys just a couple of seconds to give us the very last answer to the last question in this discussion. And yes, the correct answer has come through by a number of you. It is Muhammad Ali Jinnah. So this came in response to the Nehru report, which rejected the concept of separate Muslims. And in March 1929, Jinnah, in his presidential address to the Muslim League at its Delhi session, gave a speech in which he made several constitutional demands which were intended to safeguard the Muslim community. And these ideas became popular as Jinnah's 14 points. So that is the end of the answer discussion part of this webinar. We're sure you guys are really, really excited to hear the results. So we're not going to wait, and we're going to announce them in a couple of minutes. And yes. So before we reveal the results, we just want to go through a few things. First of all, while we encourage multiple teams from one college, only 2 teams from one college are allowed to move on to the knockout rounds. So if 3 teams have qualified, then the 2 teams with higher scores will be allowed to go through only. Teams with the same score have been allocated ranks based on star questions. If they have answered the same number of starred questions, then we have taken into account the amount of time they've taken to answer, to finish the quiz. As a result, some teams which have performed extremely well have not moved on to the knockout rounds, and we will be making honorable mentions of these teams in the results that we'll be announcing now. We also want to say that we have reviewed the recordings, the Zoom recordings sent by the teams that we have contacted, and some teams have been disqualified if they have indulged in malpractice or if they have not abided by the rules and regulations that we have given you about video recording. So now let's move on to the results. I will first be announcing the results for the South Preliminary Regional Round, which took place on the 3rd of October. So I'm going to start from the end. In 8th place, we have St. Joseph's College Autonomous Bangalore, the team Fake SJC Quizzers. So congratulations to you guys. You'll be moving on to the knockout rounds. In 7th place, we have the team from Tata Institute of Social Sciences, Hyderabad, team Triquetra. In 6th place, we have the team from Indian Institute of Technology, Madras, Triumvirate. In 5th place, we have the team from School of Law, Christ University, Bangalore, Quizarks. In 4th place, we have the team from the National Academy of Legal Studies and Research, Nalsar, Hyderabad, Bale Veduji. In 3rd place, we have a team from the National Law School of India, University, Bangalore, faith-based initiative. In 2nd place, we have another team from the School of Law, Christ University, Bangalore, Ginger Beer Snails. And in 1st place, another team from National Law School of India, University, Bangalore, Fundamentally Right. Congrats, guys. You are the first 8 teams to move on to the knockout rounds. Kritika will now be announcing the results for the East round.
Yes, here we go.
And sorry.
Oh, sorry, yeah, before that,
my mistake. We have to make our honorable mentions for the South. 2 teams from the National Law School of India, University, Bangalore performed exceedingly well, Yada Yada and Conquerors, but were unable to move on because there were 2 teams from their university that had scored higher than them. School of Law, Christ University, Bangalore, the team called To Be Decided also performed exceedingly well, but was unable to move on because 2 teams from Christ University had already made it through. So now, without further ado, Kritika can now announce the results of the East round.
Here, the 8th team is Jogesh Chandra Chaudhary Law College. The team is called the Pacifists. The 7th rank is National Law University Odisha team called the Last Seculars. We hope you're not the last seculars though. The next sixth rank goes to NIT Jamshedpur team called Team Procon. The 5th rank goes to National University of Study and Research in Law, Ranchi, and the team name is the acronym of their college. The 4th rank goes to another. Is this the first NLEO team? Oh yeah, this is the first NLEO team. The 3rd rank goes to NIT. Sorry. Just give us 1 second. We're just checking in. Just give us 1 second. Sorry.
Yeah, please give us a second.
Okay, sorry. I think the 6th rank was a team from NUJS called NUJS, and NIT Jamshedpur stood 3rd. So yeah, the 6th rank did not go to NIT Jamshedpur, but indeed went to NUJS team.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
so,
and 3rd place will go to NIT Jamshedpur.
Yes. And the 2nd place goes to Chanakya National Law University, Patna team called Narcotics Control Bureau. And the 1st rank goes to a team from NUJS called Trivalent Elements. So we'll also be mailing all the teams that made it to avoid any confusion, right?
Yeah, we'll be sending out an email to each team. Yeah.
The next, honorable mentions, another team from NLU Odisha called Forward Block. Yeah. Moving on, Madhavi will announce it for the next round, right?
Yeah. So this is in 8th place for the North is the team from Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia National University Lucknow, which is named NLU Lucknow as the team. In the 7th place is the team from Sri Venkateshwara College, New Delhi, Smells Like Team Spirit. In 6th place, we have the team from Ramjas College, New Delhi, called ConQuest. In 5th place, we have the team from Delhi School of Journalism in Delhi, called PIL 2.0. In 4th place, we have the team from Hindu College, Delhi, called Hinduites. In 3rd place, we have the team from the School of Law and Legal Studies from Guru Gobind Singh Indraprastha University, called USLLS. In 2nd place, we have the team from St. Stephen's, New Delhi, called Law Stephanians. And in 1st place, we have the team from Shahid Bhagat Singh College, Delhi, called Inquisitive Zindabad. Congrats, guys. Now we're going to go on to the honorable mentions for the North. We'd like to mention a team from Ramjas College, Delhi, called Nila, and the team from BITS Pilani Social Capitalist. You guys scored exceedingly well and were, and score-wise, were on par with other teams that qualified. Unfortunately, the other teams had more starred questions from you or had taken shorter time to complete their quiz, so you were not able to move on to the knockout round. Now, Kritika will announce the qualifying people for the from the West preliminary regional round.
Yes. The 8th rank, a team from Symbiosis Law School, Pune, SLS Team 1. 7th rank, a team from National Law Institute University, Bhopal. Yes, they have their title as Chandrachud Quistro
Christophersons, yeah.
6th rank goes to IMA, left of the right. 5th rank goes to Symbiosis Law School, Pune, Quarantine. 4th rank goes to National Institute University, Bhopal, NLIU, Quizicians. 3rd rank goes to ILS, Pune. The 2nd rank goes to NMIMS, Kirit P. Mehta School of Law, Mumbai, and their team is called Shivas Legal. And the team that topped West is a team from Government Law College, and the team name is called Smarty Fine. And yeah, honorable mentions, a team from GNLU, Mind Masters.
So these are the matchups for the knockout rounds. We will be sending them across, we will be contacting all the teams that qualified. You can see that the knockout rounds take place across 4 different days on 2 different weekends. The timing of the knockout round will be from 2 to 4 p.m. on each of these days. We will, as we mentioned, we will also be contacting members of these teams individually. And yes, so congratulations to all the qualifying teams. And I'd like to thank everybody for participating in this first digital edition of ConQuest, that is ConQuest 2020. This has been a fantastic weekend with a very competitive preliminary round. And we are sure that the knockout rounds are going to be even more engaging and fun-filled. So please do tune into the knockout rounds. They're going to be conducted live on Zoom over the next 2 weekends, and they will be open to the public. Remember that the top 2 teams from each round will move on to the grand finale. Thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this discussion round and the declaration of the results.